Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to another freezing cold episode of Threadbanger.
This week we're hanging out with upcycling extraordinaire Bobbi Clothes.
She's gonna show us how to take all that extra fabric you got lying around, and I know you got a lot of it, and make it into an awesome, one-of-a-kind winter scarf.
My name is Barbara Schowicker. My label is Bobbi Clothes. I make a lot of things. I make mostly women's clothes, tops and bottoms and skirts, and I do bags and jewelry. I print a lot of my own fabric. I hand dye everything. I weave, I felt, I hand paint on clothing. Today I'm going to use some of my scraps left over. We're going to make a belt or a scarf. It's going to be woven, and it's a really simple way to do it. The first thing that I had to do was make a loom. So it's a really basic rustic loom. So this is just a piece of wood that I found outside on the street probably. There's been some screws that have been screwed into the ends. Even amount of screws on each side. I'm kind of freestyle, but some people might be, you might want to measure out, you know, a ½ inch or a ¼ inch and then put your screws, or nails. You could use nails too. And it doesn't have to be this big. This is a pretty big piece of wood. You could use a smaller one if you want to do a small piece. I'm going to weave with silk and I want to dye it, so I want this to dye as well as the silk that I weave with. The way that we're going to string up the warp is I'm just going to take it and take one of the ends and just tie it to this first screw. And then I'm going to come all the way down, and we want to keep it pretty taut. So we're just going to do a plain weave today, which is a really simple weave. So when you get to the end, you can just snip it from the main ball, and then I'm going to take it around here, and you want to try to keep it really tight. And then you're just going to, as you pull it tight, you're going to pull the knot tight. And then you're going to tie this in a knot also. So now the warp, and you can see it's pretty tight, but there's space underneath it that you're going to weave. And what I do is I'm just going to take my silk scraps like this. This is a pretty big piece, so I'll start with this. Take your scrap and then just snip it along with the grain of the fabric so it's easy to tear, and then you're going to tear pieces like this. To connect the pieces in order to weave them, what I do is I just make a little teeny snip on one end of it. You take another piece and you put it through that hole, and then the one that you had just pulled through, you snip that, and you take its end and you stick it back through its hole here. And what's happening is that you're starting to get basically a long piece that you're going to weave. Long pieces are about 10 feet long, so when you join the pieces and you have some 10 feet long pieces, then you should start weaving.
So much of the process of blogging is taking pre-existing pieces of media, like linking to something and then adding your idea on top of it. So I think a lot of stuff that happens in new media sort of comes out of that hip-hop creative process.
VPC TV is brought to you by ASUS and Intel. You dream it, ASUS builds it, Intel inside.
Do-it-yourself clothing that's one of a kind. You're watching Threadbanger.
I put it under the first one, and then I pull it all the way through. Some people, when you take this off, when you take the scarf or the belt off, you're going to have to cut these and tie them. So some people like to create like a buffer, so they make sure that they have these tassels. You can take any sort of scrap fabric you have and weave it into this area here. And basically weaving, what I'm doing is a plain weave. It's just over, under, over, under. And it's not going to stay in the belt. You're going to actually take this piece out, but it's just to create that buffer to make sure that these threads right here will stay open, so you can have enough room to tie when you cut the scarf or the belt off of the loom. I'm going to start weaving with the silk, and it's the same thing I was doing with the scrap piece, is that you're going to pull it to the edge, and then you're just going to, I went underneath this, and then you're going to start just going over, under, over, under, over, under. After you start weaving, depends on how tight you want to try to get your weave. So on this belt, I left it pretty loose. I like the way that it looks when it shows through and it kind of slides around. But if you didn't want that and you wanted it to be really tight, like this part's kind of tighter, then you really want to pack the woven pieces down as you do it. But if you're going to push it really tight, then you might want to put a lot more scrap fabric in that you're going to take out, so you make sure that you have these pieces at the end that you can tie off. When you get to the edge, I mean, it's pretty simple, plain weave, but I'm over this one, so I'm going to start under, and then I'm just going over, under, over, under. So I just kind of added that in for color, and now we're at the end already, and I'm going to pick my purple strip back up, and I'm going to do it the same way that I did the other ones, if you remember. And if you really wanted to get crazy and you were using something thinner or you had bigger beads, I mean, you can put a bead on. So this is actually a wooden bead that was supposed to be sold for hair, and I'm just going to stick my scissors in there. And then I'm going to string my bead through, and then you want to just keep going, and then your bead will be in there. We'll put this little piece in. So I'm just going to tie these two together. When I'm tying these together, I want to make sure that that end one's going underneath it and up, and one's going over it, if that makes sense. So I'm actually tying the string in there. You don't have to, if you get really, really tired of it and you feel like your scarf is long enough, you can cut it and stop. Once you have the scarf or the belt as long as you want it, as much as you want to weave on it, then you've got to take it off the loom. So the way that you do that is, remember, we put this scrap piece in right here that is not part of it, because I wove with the silk and this is just a scrap piece. But you can undo it a little bit, and then you can see your thread. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to snip this, and I'm going to snip the second one, and I'm going to tie those together. I'm going to keep going and cutting these, and remember, when we start we have this tail, so it's okay to take the tail and tie it in with some of these too to secure it in there. Voila! We have a very beautiful scarf with lots of silk threads. Pretty? Or we can have a really rad belt. So now you guys know how to make your own loom very simply and weave a belt or a scarf. And remember, if you want to dye it, to stay with the same kind of fabric. If you want to check out more of Bobbi Clothes, you can go to bobbiclothes.com. Thanks.
Hey Robin, Corinne, it's Tina. Tina Takes Flight on the forums. I was watching some of your old videos. I was trying to get some ideas for something to make. I was a little bored this weekend. So I saw on two of your videos you guys are both wearing the same scarf. And I was like, oh, it's a cool scarf. So I tried to almost replicate it, but it's different. I had some t-shirt clippings, a bunch of little extra leftover scraps that I didn't want to just throw them out. This is my first video upload, so I hope it's alright.
Well, that's all we got for you this week.
Make sure you keep on sending in your videos, your requests, and your questions to tips@threadbanger.com.
Or just leave them in the comments below. Stay warm, everyone.
There you go.